introduce myself. I'm talking from The Hague. That's the hometown of SWAT, which is the Netherlands National Research Institute for Road Safety. I see quite a few acquaintances if I look at the chat and also the participants. Don, please, the next slide. These are just a few of my colleagues. No, in fact, this is all SWAT. Our mission is to use knowledge from scientific research, including, I may say, from the University of Delft, to contribute to better road safety. Don, next slide, please. Let's warm up. Who is interested in owning a self-driving car? Let's have a quick poll. Could start the poll, Don. You can answer in the chat. Okay. Well, Fika would like to have one. Very much so, indeed. Frank Riekt, so you don't have to park in order to join. David, you're not interested? That's okay. Prefer sharing. That's very social, Dirk. That's how I came to know you. I'll rent it. Okay. Shared automated vehicle, please. Arnoud, also very social. Not for you, Sama. Okay. Well, to be honest, and especially if I could have the next slide on the next question, if the price tag would be 20% higher, I wouldn't be too interested in buying one myself, to be honest. But then I don't drive much, and when I do drive, I enjoy driving. Could I have the next question? Where can we expect the most benefits? Is it the environment? Is it safety? Is it a better use of urban space? Or is it an alternative use of time? And now we have the polling options. Let me see your votes, please. I guess in a moment we'll have the results for that. So, Dawn, we can might as well turn to the next slide. Okay, that's very interesting. Safety. That's the highest score that that you guys think it will be beneficial to. Alternative use of time. I would say for the driver, that's almost a no-brainer. A better use of urban space, slightly lacking, I must say. In the environment, I agree. I tend to agree. And in combination with spatial planning, I see we are beyond the hype. I put that on my Twitter feed from the self-driving car, and I'm very happy about that because I think we can then turn the attention to the real issues with self-driving and highly autonomous functions. But I think benefits for the environment, well, they remain to be seen. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you for polling. This is SWAT. This is what we do. We do all kinds of research, for instance, in a simulator, but that's, of course, threshold research for safety institutes. Could I have the next slide, please, Dawn? This is more interesting, perhaps. This is an instrumented vehicle where we look at naturalistic ways of doing research. So we monitor all kinds of aspects of the trip. And this makes it interesting because we can use this knowledge also to program automated vehicles in order to make them behave more naturally. Could I have the next slide, Dawn? We are participating and leading several projects. UDrive was one of the projects we lead. Next slide, please. It was a large naturalistic scale research into driving observations into Europe. And the good news is on the next slide. It's on the slide after this one. Here you can see some examples of all the monitoring and the examples of the camera images that we have. And we are actually used to study natural behavior behind the wheel. Next slide, Don. The full data set of UDrive is now available at SWAT. So if you're interested in using this kind of naturalistic driving data, please give us drop your name or try to contact us, and we can perhaps help you with that. Next slide, Don. That's another project that we are involved in. It's Levitate. We look at the societal level impact of connected and highly automated vehicles together with Loughborough University of the UK. Next slide. And Mediator, of course, that's the one that we are coordinating at this moment. And it's actually looking at how to create the best interplay between the driver and the machine. And that's now actually started 1.5 years ago. Next slide, Don. Here you can see what we try to do, actually mediating the level of control between the human driver and the automation system of the vehicle. Next slide. And you can all the information of what we do and our mission, and also my colleagues on our website, which is swov.nl. Okay, so far the commercial messages. Let's turn to the next slide. It's important, but I think most people already know that you put your microphone and the video off, then we have the best connections. But please do use the chat function. I think that's one of the big advantages of having a video conference, and we can now use all the questions and all the remarks via the chat functions. And you can find all the presentations also after the emission on this website, STAD.TU-Delft.nl. Oh yes, this is all being recorded, just keep that in mind. Well, let's get started with Pablo. Oh, we start with Reanne on this one. This is also very good. Reanne, you started the STAD project 4 years ago. You've been working on the work package 7, which is case studies and demonstrators, and which really focuses on the practical dimension of the things. And today you will present your latest paper for the TRB conference. Reanne, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Peter. I'll upload my presentation. Yes. All right, so you see my presentation, I hope?
Sure.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for the introduction. I'm Reanne, and I've been working on work package 7, case studies and demonstrators, under the supervision of Bart van Arem from the Delft University and Frank Riek from the University of Applied Sciences, Rotterdam. Of course, I can't tell everything I did these past couple of years, so today I would like to give a short overview of my case studies, and I'll elaborate a bit more on the last paper for the TRB conference. First, I'd like to start with a poll. When do you think we'll have automated vehicles operating on our public transport system? Less than 5 years, 5 to 10, over 10 years, and for the pessimists, never. Quite a few optimistic people here. All right, I'll publish the results. As you can see, a lot of people think within 5 years, so very optimistic views, 5 to 10, and only one who said never. So I think in general we're quite optimistic. Let's see, next slide. These are the case studies I've done the last 4 years, and some cases are the result of a collaboration with either external parties or partners from the project. For example, the case study for Rotterdam The Hague Airport was part of a larger evaluation of the tender called Marketplace for Infrastructure, which I worked on in collaboration with Rebel. Also, automated vehicle meets public transport. That was a project in collaboration with Goudappel, in which we interviewed transport authorities to ask them how they think automated vehicles will affect the public transport of the future. And we also created an overview of pilots in the Netherlands. And lastly, I've worked on the automated buses in Europe with the Autobus project, in which we created an overview of pilots in Europe. So today I'd like to share some of my work for the TRB paper, and also a lot of studies that I've already done are part of the TRB paper. So that gives me the opportunity to tell a little bit more. So the TRB paper is for me a wrap-up of my work for STAD. The idea of this paper was to combine most of my previous work and the information I gathered from the pilots in the Netherlands as well as abroad. And the paper is also a bit of a reality check. There's this hype around automated vehicles, but what is currently possible and also what is actually happening in real life. So the research question of this paper is, what are the characteristics of promising situations where automated vehicles can be deployed in public transport based on knowledge gained from practice, which practice is the main part of my work package. It's still quite broad, so to narrow it down, we considered 3 aspects, which is the type of environment, and we chose for environment and not just infrastructure, because environment is much broader than just the infrastructure. The average speed of the shuttle and the presence of an onboard steward. And these aspects are closely related to the main question, because the type of environment and the average speed of the shuttles already show the practical limitations of the system. Also, the presence of the onboard steward negates the expected reduction of total cost of ownership due to the absence of a driver and can affect the decision-making of transportation operators. So to answer the research question, we considered the pilots in Europe, the case study from Appelscha, the WePods, the Rivian Park Shuttle, but also automated vehicles versus public transport, and we added American studies as well. So now I'd like to motivate a little bit why we used these studies and, of course, what we found. First of all, the pilots in Europe. We was in collaboration with the Autobus project. This is a screenshot from the overview. It's a bit small, but the information that we gathered was the country, location, date when the pilot took place, what type of vehicle was used, the capacity of the vehicle, the speed, the route, length of the route, if there were any infrastructural changes, if so, what changes, and also if there was research involved. An interesting column is also more information. There are actually the links where you can find more about the projects. And it's very interesting that we found 118 pilots. So not all information was complete, but we were able to get a lot of information on the 3 aspects, environment, speed, and steward. And also some interesting findings from this study is that these pilots took place in 18 countries, and France, Germany, and Norway are the leading countries. We're shared number 4. We also noticed an increase in interest in automated vehicles starting from 2016, with the most pilots taking place between 2018 and 2019. And what I also found very interesting is that 80% of these pilots were conducted with vehicles from Navia or EasyMile. So they are definitely dominating the market at the moment, which I think also makes sense why France is a leading country, since both EasyMile and Navia are French companies. One of our conclusions from this inventory is that many pilots are not well documented or not documented at all. So everyone, please document what you're doing so we can learn from it. And the Dutch cases were selected based on available in-depth information. And I believe that the differences and similarities of these cases are representative for pilots in the Netherlands. And the vehicle in Appelscha, which was my first case study, operated on a bicycle lane just outside the village. The vehicle operated for 6 weeks, but was paused for a while to take extra security measures. And the main takeout from this project is that even though the maximum speed was only 15 kilometers an hour, which suggests that the vehicle is suitable to share the road with cyclists, this particular bicycle lane was not sufficient due to the width of the lane. The vehicle was not able to drive on the side of the road, but had to move 20 centimeters to the center, which made it very narrow for cyclists to pass or overtake the vehicle. No accidents. At some point, some places were that narrow that it was impossible. But no accidents happened, but it did cause frustration with the cyclist. And we chose this Appelscha case because the vehicle operated in mixed traffic with very little infrastructural changes to facilitate the vehicle. The WePod operated also on public roads in mixed traffic in Wageningen. The WePod was interacting with cyclists, but also with cars. And the project consisted of 2 routes. One was on the campus of Wageningen, and one was from the train station to the campus. And especially the route to the train station deemed very challenging. And the WePod case study was chosen because this project was actually the first to operate an automated vehicle on public roads. And the WePod also invested heavily in the technique, but ultimately was not able to fulfill the intended service to and from the train station. The third case study is the case of Rivium Park Shuttle, which is operating at Capella aan de IJssel, close to Rotterdam. And this park shuttle is unique because it's fully operational and has been operating since the 90s on a dedicated track without onboard steward. And crossing traffic is managed with barriers. And because this vehicle has been operating for such a long time, it is considered as proven technology. So the automated vehicle versus public transport inventory is also included in the TRB paper. As I briefly mentioned, that this inventory contains interviews with 12 public transport authorities to find out how they think AVs will affect public transport in the future. And they mentioned that the main challenges for public transport is the accessibility, the aging society, declining population, as well as keeping public transport feasible. And they believe that automated vehicles can be part of the solution for these challenges. And in general, they agreed that the first and last mile is the most beneficial for automated vehicles at this time because of the current slow speed of the vehicles. And part of this project was an overview of pilots in the Netherlands. I must say it was 2 years ago, so since everything's going so fast, it's probably already outdated a little bit. The public transport authorities also noted in the interviews that current projects with automated vehicles are mostly focused on technical aspects. But they believe the challenges regarding the deployment of AVs extend beyond the technical level. So their advice is to focus with upcoming pilots more on the traveler and the position of the vehicle within the public transport network. And they also stress that it's important to think about long-term implementation and perhaps permanent operations. Last but not least, we involved American studies in the mix. And we used studies which provided an overview of pilots with automated shuttles. One of the studies was from Heikoop and Reanne, and they identified 19 shuttle projects, which they selected 6 projects for in-depth research. And the selected cases are representative of their location type. And these shuttles had in common that they were all deployed in relatedly dense urban areas. So, for example, downtowns, entertainment areas, stadiums, campus, transit stations. The right-of-way was either a designated lane in mixed traffic or off-street trial, depending on the deployment. We also added findings of the Federal Transit Administration. And they have a study that contains 10 pilots in America. And they concluded that shuttle vehicles are limited to certain operating environments due to their low speed. And lastly, an online survey of Bloomberg shows that most cities are interested in operating automated vehicles on the last mile to bridge that gap at the edges of the transit systems. And they consider last mile solutions with automated vehicles as low-hanging fruits. So when we throw all this knowledge from practice in the mix, we'll be able to answer the research question with regards to the characteristics of promising situations for deployment of automated vehicles based on the three aspects: the type of environment, speed, and the presence of the steward. But before I do that, I want to start another poll. I'm wondering, how fast do you think the automated shuttles have driven on average? 15 kilometers, 21, 32, or 40? And I mean overall, so the Dutch, European, and American shuttles. Yeah, I think you're really close. We have a few optimists as well, 40 kilometers. All right. So most were 15 kilometers an hour. Yeah, I did mention a few times that they're slow, but they're actually not that slow because it was 21 kilometers an hour. So the results from the study is that with regards to the type of environment, we found that most pilots took place in semi-controlled, publicly accessible environments, such as campuses, stadiums, office parks, entertainment areas, or near transit stations. At these locations, the speed of other road users is often low. And that also, it's also with the Appelscha and the WePod pilots, they were both conducted with relatively little infrastructural changes, which is similar to the findings of the European pilots. And the Rivian Park Shuttle is operating on a dedicated lane, and this means major infrastructural changes, but also very little interruptions in operation. And also the Rivian Park Shuttle is, as far as I know, still the only permanently operating shuttle system in Europe. And with regards to the speed, we found that 78% of 82 pilots in Europe have an average speed below 21 kilometers an hour. And the Park Shuttle is operating on a dedicated lane and is therefore able to drive a lot faster, around 32 kilometers an hour. Most pilots were limited in the allowed speed, and the average operational speed was often lower than the design speed. So the vehicles are often able to drive a lot faster, but they're not allowed, or they can't because of the circumstances. And the American pilots indicate that the average speed of the shuttles was between 16 and 24 kilometers. So it's very close to what we have here. With regards to the stewards, the European pilots, the Dutch cases, and the American pilots all operated with onboard stewards, except, as I mentioned before, the Rivian Park Shuttle. And as far as I know, the Rivian Park Shuttle is also the only automated vehicle operating without onboard steward. Of course, it has a lot to do with legislation as well. So based on these findings, we created an illustration shown here. We made 3 scenarios ranging in complexity. And the first scenario shows the automated vehicle operating on a dedicated lane. As I mentioned, little interaction means better execution of the timetable. And the second scenario shows the AV operating on public roads, but with several conditions, such as warning signs and limited interaction with other traffic. And this situation is comparable with the semi-controlled, publicly accessible environments, such as campus area, business parks. And the third scenario shows the AV operating in mixed traffic on public roads, but with speed limits and a parking ban. So I think that could be the next step for the pilot. And the figure shows the increase in complexity in which the automated vehicles discussed in the paper are operating. And in general, the findings of this paper reveal that implementation of automated vehicles as operational system is still very limited and very specific under very specific conditions. So to wrap it up, the speed of the vehicle during the pilots were low, with most vehicles operating below 21 kilometers an hour. And also all pilots, except the Rivian Park Shuttle, operated with steward on board. And with these conditions, the possible implementations of the vehicles are often limited to short distances in semi-controllable but publicly accessible environments. And this corresponds to the expectations that automated vehicles are most beneficial as first and last mile solution, as mentioned by the interviewed parties in our automated vehicle meets public transport project, as well as mentioned by Bloomberg as low-hanging fruits. The pilots in Netherlands, Europe, and America, they show a broad interest in implementing automated vehicles in public transport worldwide. And technical issues are being fixed with every new pilot, and the technology is improving so fast. And in the Netherlands, I noticed that there seems to be a shift from focusing on technical aspects to actually fulfilling a public transport gap and offering a service with automated vehicles. And therefore, the goal of the pilot seems to be shifting from short-term experiments to long-term pilots or even permanent applications. So after all of this, I wonder how you feel about that first question now. So I'd like to ask you again, when do you think we'll have automated vehicles operating in our public transport system?
Okay, and I'd like to invite the audience to pose one question to Reanne. Who can I give the floor? And you can use the chat or you can use the microphone. And in the meantime, Reanne, we can look at the results.
Yep. Where did I? Oh, I was in the chat. Now I lost my poll.
No. That's unfortunate. Let's do it again.
Oh, yeah, I have to start it again. Sorry. I'll stay away from the chat then.
So USAC is stating that giving the average traffic speed on European cities 16 to 21 kilometers isn't that bad. How would you respond to that, Reanne?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what the exact number is for average speed of a regular city bus. But yeah, it's not too bad. But the thing is that it takes, if you have a certain route, it takes quite a long time to do the full loop. And a lot of people mentioned also with the Appelscha project that they experienced the vehicle as being slow as well, or if the vehicle is being overtaken by a bicycle. That doesn't really make it more attractive to use it. So yeah,
I'll share the famous photograph of the Dutch lady on the bicycle who had to actually get into the grass in order to let this pot pass her on the bicycle lane.
Yeah. I didn't use it in this one. Yeah, I noticed that the poll stopped. But I have slightly less responses, but I think A is still very dominant compared to the first poll, but B and C are the same now, and that it was 27 and 20. And there are still 2 people who think it'll never happen.
There are several interesting questions. Let's take one from Frank Riek. How crucial is the steward for a business case?
I think for now, yes, specifically for a business case, I think the steward has to be taken out of the vehicle to make it more interesting. Because also with the Rivian Park Shuttle, for example, there are 6 shuttles operating with 1 operator. So he's supervising 6 vehicles. With the other pilots, what you saw is that there's a steward in every single vehicle. So that means if you have 6 vehicles, you need 6 stewards. And you have to pay all these 6 stewards. So yeah, for the business case, I think it is crucial to take the steward out of the vehicle.
Okay. You have some advantages for the social safety, of course, if you have a steward on board, but why not have a driver instead? And I would almost comment. Well, Reanne, thank you very much for your very clear presentation and also, I think, very clear conclusion. Let's give her a virtual round of applause.
Thank you.
And, Dawn, if you could move to the next presentation, please. Thank you, Reanne.
Yes, thank you.
Dawn, and we have the next presentation, please. Okay. Daniël, there you are. You're a postdoc at the for this program. You started your PhD with the Marie Curie program. That's, I think, noticeable because that's, of course, very prestigious. You did your PhD on driver psychology during automated platooning from Delft, but also working together with the University of Southampton. I'd say we can't wait to hear your presentation.
Good. Hello, everyone. As introduced, I'm Daniël Heikoop. I'm the postdoc at the Meaningful Human Control over Automated Driving Systems project. And what I mainly do is I look at human behavior and psychology in automated vehicles. So yeah, basically what I ask myself is what can and what can't we do whilst driving an automated vehicle. So one question was, are automated cars and human behavior a happy marriage together? I mean, if you look at an automated car, it looks very promising. No more driving at all. You can do other stuff like doing your work in the car, maybe sleep, have lunch, God knows what. So yeah, it looks great. So we would say, yeah, why not an automated car? Gimme, gimme, gimme. Well, of course, that's not so easy to say, because there are lots of other tasks to do in an automated car, namely paying attention to the road, watching out for errors of the self-driving car, being aware of its limitations and understanding what it's doing, and eventually also taking over whenever it's necessary. Because an automated vehicle, at least up until now, they are not perfect and they are very limited in its capabilities. And yeah, there's so many circumstances where it can go wrong. In those cases, the human driver needs to take over, and it can sometimes be very difficult to do. Moreover, because you haven't been taught to pay attention for a long time when everything is going right. So in order to inventory what skills are needed in an automated car and how they change whenever you introduce a higher and higher level of automation, I first looked at what we are being taught to have as skills and rule-based behavior and knowledge-based behavior in a manual vehicle. And I found out that we need to have 128 different skills in order to get our driving license, and we need to know 254 rules. And even though that seems like a lot, most of them are quite straightforward. It's like the simple things like do not litter, do not drive dangerously. But there are also rules in terms of registration and licensing and loading of your vehicle. But in the end, it's all part of your theory. So that is something you should know in order to get your driving license. And even though it is as all-encompassing as it needs to be, there are still situations you cannot train for, and you need to adapt to that situation at that moment, given your skills and your rules you have for other situations, and then apply it to that new situation. And that's where your knowledge-based behavior comes in. And there's still a substantial amount of knowledge-based behavior left for you to do as well in a manual car. So plenty to do in order to drive your manual vehicle. Then I started looking at how introducing automated systems or ADAS into your vehicle, how that changes, how that takes over or introduces other tasks. And what I found out is that given the type of control, either longitudinal or lateral or both, it differs slightly as to what types of tasks an automated vehicle or automated driving system takes over in terms of skills and rules. And it's not so much, but it is something. Then my question to you is, what does it do to our knowledge-based behavior? Does it go down? Answer A. Does it remain the same? Does it go up? Or does it go to zero? I already see a lot of answers coming in, a lot of correct answers as well. So I'm already happy.
So this is the question about, does it lead to dumbing down the human drivers?
Yeah, that's indirectly. So I wouldn't say it directly, but
No,
yeah.
of course not.
Okay, I think we have plenty to go from. So at least no one says goes to zero, and I'm glad to see that. And the majority says that it actually goes up, our knowledge-based behavior. And it's probably because I gave it away a little bit, saying that there are other tasks introduced, like monitoring the road, paying attention to the system, understanding its limitations, etc., etc. So indeed, it does go up. It's fairly substantial, I would even say, given the fact that some knowledge-based behavior gets taken over due to the longitudinal and/or lateral control, but it doesn't add up to the amount of extra tasks that are being introduced, and that is already becoming troublesome, because those are all tasks you haven't been trained to do. And from there on, we go to level 3, which is, I would say, the most troublesome level of all. And you can already see why, I think. There's a huge range in the amount of tasks. It can either be the same as partial automation, but it can also be a lot less. And there are a couple of things next to it, and the most important one are the question mark and the exclamation mark, because the question mark indicates that we don't really know, because there are no level 3 vehicles on the road in this world yet that are driving legally, and yeah, we just don't know what it entails. So yeah, for all we know, the entire world would look different where cars are driving level 3 automation. So we don't know what is expected from us and what not. But also at this level of automation, you can already expect a skill deterioration, because if you drive too long in an automated vehicle, you start to forget your skills and rules because you don't practice them enough. And then they add up to your knowledge-based behavior. So taking that into mind, it can well be even much higher than what is originally already high. 81, I would say, is high. But yeah, we don't know. And what is especially important is the thick blue bar next to it. And that indicates the point up to where us human drivers are still expected to be the fallback in case of taking over control. So even if the conditional automation level 3 drives automatically for a very long time perfectly, nothing is wrong, you are still expected to take over whenever and wherever. And given the amount of skills and rules and knowledge that is left of you at that stage, it can be very dangerous. And then let's not speak about the higher levels of automation, because again, we don't know how the world will look like. Ideally, we would have no skills necessary at all anymore, and no knowledge-based behavior at all anymore. But we just don't know, and it can cause serious problems at this level. So there's a clear mismatch between the supply and the demand in terms of our skills and rules and knowledge-based behavior, the way it is designed now, and especially at level 3 where it drops to a substantial amount and can introduce a lot of extra tasks for us. So yeah, what we can say is automated cars and human behavior, they are not a happy marriage, at least yet. So there are two things we can do, at least two things I could think of that we can do. We can either learn how to maintain attention, anticipate, collaborate, etc., or we could design our automated vehicles to that allows us to maintain attention and allows us to anticipate and allows us to collaborate, etc., etc. So I would ask the public, what would be the better option according to you? Would that be learning or designing? Would we be better suited to just have more driver training, or do we just need to cram all kinds of design things into our new vehicles before they end up on the road?
You talked about marriage. Is it an arranged marriage, would you say?
Currently, it sort of is. It slowly is, but only for the minority, I'd say. Yeah,
would you recommend separation or splitting up? Or skipping, perhaps?
Or maybe counseling. Maybe counseling, that would be the better one. It's
phase 3, of course.
Yeah, it's we need to be able to collaborate. We need to work together. Marriage comes from both sides, right?
Bart van Adem says they are still dating.
Yeah, that is true.
Okay, there's the results from your poll.
Yeah, so many say that we need to design proper cars, and yeah, that would be a very good idea, I would say. And some of us also say that we would be better off learning to drive with those cars. For both sides, I would say there's something to say about it that, I could agree to both. And because of that, I tried looking into that and see what would be better, tailor-made or tailor-taught. And for that, I tried looking into the individual differences whilst driving in an automated vehicle, because it was found that there are large individual differences between humans in terms of takeover time, for instance, where some people it's the 90th percentile, but still 90% is, so the 10% does that, is still quite a lot. It's up to 30 seconds to take over in a critical situation. And yeah, most accidents don't happen after 30 seconds. So if we design for the 90th percentile, yeah, it's a bit troublesome. But moreover, also in manual driving, individual differences have been found in terms of driving angry. Extrovert people tend to do that, apparently, and there are many other examples of that. So I thought, let's look at these aspects in automated vehicles. And for that, I designed a large-scale simulator study with more than 100 participants. And I looked at, I recruited participants based on their personality. And then I would ask them to drive in an automated vehicle simulation, of course. The individualization would go through the big 5 personality traits. It's the most common division of personality worldwide. So I thought, let's go for the most common one, the most widely accepted one, that wouldn't cause controversy as an initial step. And yeah, it is just an initial step into tailored ADS to see if we could determine 5 different traits with 5 different driving styles that need 5 different types of automated driving in order to create a safe driving with an automated vehicle. So yeah, can we find personality differences? And for that, we would look at various driving metrics, various driving scenarios, and takeover requests, etc., etc. All with the idea of individualization being meaningful. Because the project is meaningful human control. I think individualization, why did I use that word? is meaningful in order to have control, human control over our vehicle. And we started off doing just that, creating the simulator study. We developed a scenario, we recruited the participants, we had our physiology equipment, simulator was entirely ready, and then Corona happened. So I couldn't execute the experiment, and that was a huge shame because it would have created really interesting results. So yeah, the question was, now what? That was a completely different question than previously, but yeah, it was a question that needed answering. Luckily, we finally came up with an idea, namely an NS1 simulator study. And that idea was to validate the NS100 plus simulator study setup. So what we did is we had 2 researchers do their own experiment because it was fully completed. So all we needed to do is to tweak it so that we could do a validation study instead. So we started testing a various set of variables to see which value of that variable was the most effective, and whether there are differences, whether we need to pay attention to certain variables in the first place. And we've done that successfully, and we're very happy that worked out. And we have some preliminary results. The validation study was definitely worthwhile. There were certain clear effects to be found. Certain variables can be predetermined in that sense, and yeah, certain variables need to be taken into account for such a simulator study. So it's good that we looked at it this way, so that we now can perfect the setup of the 100 plus study, and hopefully do that in the future. Some of the preliminary results are that you really shouldn't do a takeover request in a curve. Not only because it is difficult to take over in a curve, But also in most simulators, when driving automatically, the steering wheel won't steer with. So it will be static, and then the orientation of the steering wheel will be different in the curve. So you need to correct that instantly, and you have a huge lane deviation, and you will most likely crash. So yeah, even for testing purposes, it's not advisable to do that in a curve. Another interesting result is that you can definitely create 3 types of levels of urgency, and you can clearly distinguish that in the takeover time of the participant, in this case the research itself. But if you create, for instance, a low urgency, a medium urgency, and a high urgency takeover request, you can see that in the takeover time. There are definitely differences in how quick one takes over. You can also see that in the temporal demand of the participants, and also in the amount of errors a participant makes while taking over. And especially the amount of errors that was, for instance, which is very important, I would say, is the foot placement on the pedals. In his trials, he in the most urgent takeover, he quite often misplaced his foot while taking over. Yeah, and of course, it's needless to say that is very dangerous. So yeah, you can definitely work with that. And for that, we designed an auditory takeover request where the differences were in both in speech rate, in the type of text said, and the amount of time that was available to take over. So yeah, you would, as an example, you would clearly see the difference between the system saying, please take over the steering wheel now. Then it's semi-urgent, and you know that you need to do it right now, but it's not startling, so that goes fine. And there's a reasonable amount of time in which participants take over. And then there's the laid back version where it says like something like, whenever you are ready, you might take over at your earliest convenience. You know, don't rush it, but you could do it now. And then you see a clear difference. It takes definitely longer to take over. And the worst one is the urgent takeover request, where the system would say, "Oh, for the love of God, please take over." And then you would definitely have the quickest takeover time. But as I said before, with a lot of errors, a high temporal demand, and lots of extra things to go with that. Related to that is that we also try to see if the speech rate, the tempo of the speech rate could be tweaked even more. But that didn't really help much. There was not too much difference in those. So definitely a combination of all those factors that does help. Another important result was especially for designing simulator studies, is the lane width to which you're using. And we used 3 lane widths that are common in the Netherlands. And we saw that depending on the lane width, the lane deviation was also significantly higher. So the highest lane width had the highest lane deviation. Yeah, and swerving, of course, while taking over control is not really advisable. So if you do a study where the lane width is much narrower than what is common in your country, then you might have misleading results. Moreover, again, related to any simulator study you would do, lane keeping has found to be to have a serious learning curve. So practicing whilst driving the simulator is definitely advisable as well. Next to that simulator study I've been talking about the last couple of minutes, we've done a lot more and are doing still a lot more. I'm not done yet. Luckily, I've got an extension for this project, so I can keep working on it to wrap up all the interesting projects that are going on. Yeah, here you can see the list of what is completed and ongoing. So we looked at a systematic review on HMIs in ADS, looking what is out there in terms of HMIs in ADS. It's almost completed. We are still working on the most interesting stuff right now, but the rest is done. So hopefully we'll get some results very soon. For the recruiting of participants, we had to formulate an algorithm to get the right people in the right personality trait slot. It was more difficult than you would think in the first place. So that was also interesting. We also analyzed some initial data of the recruited participants, most predominantly because we couldn't do the actual experiment. So we looked to see if we could find some interesting data on our initial data. And we also did an online questionnaire on trust in automation related to personality, also a bit because of the same issue. Then there's one experiment that got cancelled, unfortunately, also due to the Corona crisis, because that was an on-road study was planned, and we couldn't do an on-road study, so she decided to do something completely different. Another student, also on an on-road experiment, she decided to apply her idea on an online questionnaire, which is now ongoing, and it is going reasonably well. She needs a lot of participants in order to get some statistical relevant data, but it looks very promising to operationalize trackability. I have lots of difficult words. Why did I do it? It is to empirically assess the one of the two conditions, the philosophical conditions of meaningful human control. And if we are able to empirically assess that, that would be magnificent to apply something theoretically into practice. Okay. And the last one is on mental models on transition of control, looking at what us regular people think of what a transition of control is and how it looks like, how it works, and see what we can do with that. Okay, I think that was my work. So thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. And for the rest, I would say to you, please make it a meaningful day.
Okay, Daniël, thank you very much. We are running a little bit out of time, so I would skip the question to you. But I felt 60-fold sympathy and mental support when you described the bad luck you had because of the stupid virus pandemic. And I think, all admire the way that you are working around this difficult issue. Very interesting, also because you're really explicit in saying, well, this is actually very dangerous, which in terms of road safety is something that I applaud, because most people would be, well, not saying it so directly. So thank you very much, Daniël. Let's go to the next presentation, which is by somebody I know from SWAT. He did his internship with us. You joined 4 years ago the program, and you are now finishing your PhD working at Rijkswaterstaat, focusing on vulnerable road users. Pablo.
Thank you, Peter. Let's upload my presentation. So welcome everyone. I'm Pablo Nuñez Velasco, and I will tell you today about my PhD dissertation. So it's called "Should I Stop or Should I Cross? Interactions between vulnerable road users and automated vehicles." So, like Daniel already told you, we are going from an era where we are used to having a human driver behind the wheel who needs to know all the rules and have all the skills to operate this vehicle, to an era where there's a mix actually between the two. And you have all the skills and you know everything about operating a vehicle, but at the same time, in some occasions, you can even spend some time thinking of groceries and with only monitoring the vehicle, not operating it all the times, to an era where we have fully automated vehicles and your only task is to think about groceries. So that's interesting, safety-wise, but also let's think about the ones who are outside the vehicle, have to interact with this kind of vehicles. So for example, you standing on the road and seeing a vehicle approaching you, let's not think about where there's someone inside but you see this vehicle approaching and you look at it and you think, okay, is it you who goes first or is it me who goes first? And you end up in a very safe but inefficient interaction where both of you come to a standstill and none of you crosses. So this is all fine, but we can also think of other situations where not knowing how the vehicle will react can end up in an unsafe interaction. So not only because these vehicles have sensors that can react quickly, we should assume that these vehicles will be safer. There are some by effects, as I would like to call it, like no eye contact within these vehicles, but we are unsure what this will do with you as a human road user outside of this vehicle. So that's what I focused on with my PhD. So these vulnerable road users don't have a metal shield and can be quite unpredictable. Maybe you have experienced it yourself. You don't know whether this human will cross the road or not. And so it's very important for us to know how they will see automated vehicles, so we can maybe design, as Daniel already said, automated vehicles to operate in a safe way, interact with these vulnerable road users in a safe way. So what can we think of when we think of the interaction? So we can think of a vehicle that looks completely different. Here we can see a shuttle bus being operated here by a human driver, but at some point we can think that there will be no one inside. We can wonder how this affects our cyclists and our pedestrian. Also, this vehicle can try to communicate with you, projecting a zebra crossing, for example. Is this something we would like to have, or is this something that would be interesting? That's something that are questions that I looked at. So both the cyclist and the pedestrian wonder whether they should stop or they should cross. Also, we looked at the speed of the vehicle and the distance of the vehicle to you to see how these factors affected your crossing behavior. And also, we looked at the yielding behavior of the vehicle. So if it came to a standstill, how does this affect your crossing? And we also looked at the psychological factors, such as trust, expectations you have of the vehicle, the perceived risk you have, the intentions, and of course, we measured behavior. So all these factors together were studied in my studies, as we'll see. And now I would like to ask you to encircle what you think is the most important factor. I think I can give you that possibility. Let's see. Oh, I'm not sure how to do that. Maybe you can do it already. I'm not sure. Never mind. In time, we don't have all the time, so let's go forward. We can come back to it. So looking at the methodology, what I did is I designed a theoretic framework in which I mapped the factors that were the most important affecting the interactions according to literature. And based on this framework, I designed 3 experiments using virtual reality. 2 of these studies were on pedestrians crossing intentions and behavior, and the last one was on the cyclist crossing intentions. So the framework looked like this. What we did is we used the theory of planned behavior, which tells us that behavior comes from behavioral intention and the perceived control you think you have over this behavior. So do you think you can cross the road? That affects whether you cross it or not. And this intention also depends on the perceived behavioral control, the way you society thinks about this behavior, and your own attitudes towards this behavior. And what I did is I supplemented this theory with my own and what we already know about the interactions, where interaction depends on the vehicle itself, but also on the road design. The road design is the setting of this interaction and actually kind of makes the rules for how this interaction should look like or could look like. Based on how this interaction developed, you create some feedback. You learn from first interaction, and this adapts your attitudes, the way you people perceive the behavior, your own expectations about this vehicle. Maybe you learned that this vehicle doesn't react to you as much as you would like to, and maybe it also adapts with your trust. And using this theoretical framework, we designed the experiments, in which I mainly focused on these factors. So this is an overview of the studies. As you can see, I played with the automation factors, such as the appearance of the vehicle, whether the vehicle communicated with you, and the driver condition. Those were the automation factors, so factors we can expect from automation. But also we tested the vehicle behavior, such as speed, gap distance, and whether the vehicle yielded for you, and of course road design. Also, we played with zebra crossing and with the right of way. And as you can see here, we also included the psychological factors. So the methodology was using 360 videos in VR. We developed our own way of using VR, in which we recorded 360 videos of an interaction actually, and we displayed it to the participants and showed it to our participants. This is how the experiment would look like. So you would approach a crossing, and in which you would see several scenarios. For example, a scenario where you encounter a normal vehicle, and a scenario where you encounter a weapon or a shuttle. This shuttle could also project one kind of communication interface to tell you what you should do, and we asked then the participants would you cross or not. This is what it looked like. Here you can see we played with zebra crossing, no zebra crossing. We also did the same with cyclists. So here you can see a cyclist approaching this intersection, and from the left we can see an automated vehicle approaching. And we also did this in virtual reality computer simulated, in which we tried to measure behavior, and I can actually show you a video. As you can see, this is me actually moving in the real world, and you can see what I saw in the virtual reality. You can see here a boulder. That's the one I tried to cross to, and this is the one where I had to begin. This is in collaboration with the University of Leeds Institute of Transport Studies, and that's why I'm standing on this side of the road, and why you will see the driver is on the, let's say, wrong side of the car. Here we played with the driver condition. So the manipulated vehicle is here, the blue vehicle. You can see here a driver was paying attention, and I crossed the road. And we also played with the distance from you, within the two vehicles, to see whether you thought this gap would be enough for you. And we also played with whether the vehicle yielded or not. So this is a vehicle with no driver inside. I hope you could see that. And what we got from this experiment is we could measure at what point you started to make the decision. We could measure how long it took you to cross the road. We could also measure how much time there was left between the vehicle and you. So all these kind of behavioral measures we could use to see how you reacted to the driver condition, but also to the gap and to the yielding behavior. Okay, let's see
Designed
one
especially
more.
for your experiment, Pablo?
Sorry, Peter?
The virtual reality, was it designed for your experiment?
It wasn't. We had several uses for this virtual reality, but this we adapted it to my what I needed actually. So I'll stop the video. So this is the experience we use to get to the results that I will show you next, and conclusions and discussions. So what we found is that the behavior of the vehicle is actually the most important for deciding whether to cross or not. So not the physical appearance or the driver condition aren't the most important factors. What you need to know is how far is the vehicle away from me. So can I cross? Can I make it in time? Does the vehicle yield? Yes or no? And what speed is the vehicle approaching me? Those were the factors that affected the crossing behavior more than does this vehicle look different? Is there a driver inside? Yes or no? Actually, also the communication interfaces, so the external human-machine interfaces, were actually also very important. They could indeed affect how you cross the road, but we'll come back to that. So my conclusion is also the motion cues. So really the behavior is the way this vehicle communicates to you what's going to happen. So if it approaches you at a certain speed and it's not slowing down, you can take from this that you are not able to cross, or you should not cross. And also, what I didn't mention is that, as I told you, we used zebra crossing and yielding. This was also very important for the pedestrians and for the cyclists to decide their behavior. Once they knew they had the right of way, once they knew they were more sure and they crossed more often than if they didn't have the right of way. So again, the motion cues and the road design are the most important factors, and that's what you should take away from this. So the behavior of the pedestrian and the cyclist is mostly dependent on the vehicle behavior, the motion cues, and the road design. So my recommendations for futures are as follows. We should study actually the behavior of future automated vehicles, because as I just told you, the behavior of the vehicle is the most important. So if we expect that to change, what would the effects be? What can we expect from the behavior of pedestrians and cyclists? And we should also start thinking of how do we want it to be? Do we want vehicles that can communicate with pedestrians and cyclists and thus can stop at any moment? Or do we want all these very predictable vehicles that are just driving straight on at a certain speed without having too much acceleration and deceleration? We also should also think about the long-term effects. I measured, of course, now there are limited automated vehicles on the road, so my participants could have some knowledge about automated vehicles, but maybe they didn't experience them that often, didn't have any exposure to them. So we need to look at pedestrians and cyclists who had multiple exposures over time and see how their behavior changed. Do they have different expectations? Do they have different trust values? And what are the behavioral changes towards these vehicles? Are there indeed differences between automated vehicles and non-automated vehicles that I didn't find at this point? Of course, keep researching human factors. We need to know about the underlying mechanisms of behavior. And I'm not saying just this because I'm a psychologist, but also because we found that, of course, humans will always play a role. We cannot assume that adaptation will happen, that no adaptation will happen. As I told you, that it can happen based on the behavior. Further recommendations: repeat this experience in the field experiments. Of course, I used virtual reality and I designed my own virtual reality. We tested it thoroughly, but still we need to know how this relates to the field experiments. And some first results are very promising and have shown that these effects we have found are also to be found in the real world. Maybe the effect not being the same size, but the relative effect. So indeed, the behavior being still the most important one. So what can we think about external human-machine interface, about these projected zebra crossing? Are they the solution for all our problems? Let's start a poll. What do you think?
Let's see if people paid attention, Pablo. And I suggest an after party. So if Pablo, Daniel, and Reanne could stay after 4:30 to take live questions from people participating, we can still finish in time, because it was also very interesting that we are running a little bit out of time. Do we have the
Yes, we have 40 results, and it's actually quite 50-50. I'm very surprised. Thank you. Thank you for your responses.
Pablo?
Sorry?
What was your expectation?
I actually thought that I would have more no's, but I'm actually very happy that you disagree with me, because there is always room for discussion, and we don't actually know whether they are the solution or not. So maybe you have, some things that I don't. But if we look at external human-machine interfaces as the communication devices, we can think of moments where they won't work. Let's look at a challenging lighting solution, lighting conditions, or where the vehicle is too far where you can't see. And I'm not even talking about what do we want on this as external human-machine interfaces. Do we want words that are cultural based, or do we want figures? There are a whole lot of questions we need to ask. And also this counts for
comments on the chat function.
Okay, we come back to that.
Vehicles with a face, and I'm always struck by the aggressive face that BMW is presenting to the other road users. Okay, Pablo, if you could wrap up, please.
Yes, I'll go quickly. So these are some challenging things we could think about external human-machine interfaces. But if we look at practice, we need to test these vehicles extensively before accepting. We need to create requirements for these vehicles, and also for the behavior, as I just told you. We need to invest in pilots to see how this behavior develops over time, and to see how it works in a city. And as I told you, keep investing in infrastructure. As we saw, the road design is a very important factor that affects the road crossing behavior. Furthermore, and should educate road users on the capabilities and limitations of automated vehicles to make sure their expectations match the capabilities and limitations of automated vehicles, and therefore can make a much better decision on whether to cross the road or not. Thank you very much. That was my presentation.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Also for pointing out the misconception once again that there is a sort of an either-or solution in road design and vehicle technology and educating and training the human driver, which there is not.
No.
Very interesting, and I'm looking forward to the final PhD results.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, after these 3 excellent presentations, would be very happy to give the floor to Bart van Adem, who has a world premiere for us. Is that correct, Bart?
Yes, I'm there. Yes. We have a world's first today that I'm happy to share with you. But first, many thanks also to Pablo, Daniel, and Reanne for sharing their work and being brave to select the highlights of their work, because they've done so much more. And then these guys come and they tell you, well, you have 20 minutes to to tell the most important stuff. This is really hard to really choose. I can see you smiling, Pablo. You know what I mean. Overall, I made a brief count in the STAD and Meaningful Human Control project, the kind of 40 person years of research that we have done, and we're closing it now with 5 webinars. So there's much more to tell, much more to see, much more to read. So our website is still there, and you can look at the research. As again, we will have a kind of after party, which Peter is announcing after the premiere, which is a video that was made of the STAD project, in which you will also see a Pablo featuring, and Reanne, and some professor from Delft also is on that video. It lasts around 5 minutes. and highly recommend it. It will also be on LinkedIn and several other sources. And meanwhile, Peter, thank you a lot for your inspiring chairmanship and moderatorship of today. Thanks to all the audience. I think we've been having some great discussions in the chat. Stay with us for the after party, so you can have some discussion still with Pablo, Daniël, and Reanne. I would like to thank Dawn. Dawn, you've been our master of the Big Blue Button, this open source software, which actually all the data is stored on safe servers of TU Delft and the Dutch University. So this system has no storage whatsoever in any other country than the Netherlands. So, and we'll make sure that we'll take your personal data carefully here and probably destroy it after we send you one final message. Then without further ado, Dawn, can you start the video?
Voor ons was het belangrijk om zelf kennis op te doen met zelfrijdende voertuigen. Je ziet altijd heel mooie plaatjes op internet, maar wat betekent het nou echt in de praktijk? Hoe richt je je stad daarop in en wat betekent het voor de mensen die er werken en wonen en voor de bedrijven die er actief zijn?
Het STAD-project staat voor Spatial and Transport Impacts of Automated Driving. En STAD is een onderzoeksproject waarin we met 30 partners samenwerken en kijken hoe de toekomst van Nederland eruit kan zien met automatisch rijden. In het STAD-project kijken we vooral naar de gevolgen die automatisch rijden voor Nederland zal hebben en de manier waarop we daar als Nederland goed kunnen inspelen. Dat betekent dat de overheid zich kan voorbereiden met het juiste beleid, dat de private sector zich kan voorbereiden met producten en diensten en adviesproducten en dat de kennisinstellingen deze voeden met kennis over automatisch rijden. Wat we geleerd hebben binnen het STAD-project is dat de vroege vormen van automatisering eigenlijk al met redelijk beperkte aanpassingen in Nederland mogelijk zijn en voordelen kunnen brengen. Belangrijk daarbij te realiseren is dat we goed gaan letten op de veiligheid, op de betrokkenheid van de mens als bestuurder, als supervisor van het systeem.
Ik heb me bezig gehouden met de interacties tussen kwetsbare weggebruikers, en daarmee bedoel ik fietsers en voetgangers, en geautomatiseerde voertuigen. Mijn onderzoek heb ik voornamelijk gedaan in virtual reality. Ik heb gebruik gemaakt van 360 videobeelden om ervoor te zorgen dat een fietser of voetganger zich echt voelde alsof hij hier bijvoorbeeld op straat was.
The core idea that we came up in the very beginning is that what we do during travel, and perhaps we will be able to do more in automated vehicles, has the potential to impact what we do outside of travel.
In the real world, people might think that the more you compute and the more you play with the problem, the better results you get, but then you need a lot of computation power, which is very, very expensive. On the other hand, these simpler approaches are way more intuitive and they take a few seconds, so for a company it's a lot more appealing, and even for a planner it's more intuitive to plan and make any adjustments if necessary compared to something like a black box, which is these big beasts of algorithms.
Waar aanvankelijk er groot optimisme was over de mogelijkheden van automatisch rijden, merken we dat automatisch rijden toch vooral gebaat is bij een overzichtelijke omgeving, weinig interacties met andere verkeersdeelnemers en automatisch rijden dus met grote zorg moet worden toegepast. Juist op dat moment in het project hebben we al met de partners de kennis die we opgedaan hebben en de beperkingen die we zagen vertaald in richtlijnen die we nodig hebben voor automatisch rijden.
En daarom zitten we hier bij het Haga ziekenhuis, want hier rijden we samen met de HTM een test om mensen van de halte naar de ingang van het ziekenhuis te brengen in een zelfrijdend busje. Dat scheelt mensen die slechter been zijn een hoop lopen en we hopen dat ze daardoor makkelijker naar het ziekenhuis komen.
De samenwerking in het project heb ik als heel prettig ervaren, mede omdat er altijd korte lijntjes waren. Zo heb ik bijvoorbeeld in mijn werkpakket ook samengewerkt met praktijkpartners. We hebben gezamenlijk papers geschreven. Omdat ik case studies deed, ben ik heel erg afhankelijk van informatie uit de praktijk. En daar zijn de praktijkpartners echt heel ondersteunend en heel goed in geweest, want die hebben mij alle informatie gegeven die ik nodig had.
from a broader perspective, we had a lot of interactions between universities and the practice partners through a lot of public events and even partner meetings where people exchanged ideas and brainstormed. And we mostly worked with the Port of Rotterdam through SmartPort, through a colleague that was also at the Erasmus University, because they're interested in platooning as well, which is natural given that they deal with a lot of trucks.
And also, right now it's also materializing that one of my ideas, which used to be only on the paper, used to be only in academic world, is now being implemented with the student in a simulation framework. So I like to see the path from the thought to actually to implementation to real life.
Met mijn werk hoop ik bij te kunnen dragen aan het vervolg. Dus om te kijken of we nu verder kunnen van experimenteren met de voertuigen naar ook echt implementatie in het openbaar vervoerssysteem.
Met het STAD-project komen we nu aan het einde van een periode van 5 jaar intensief onderzoek in hechte samenwerking tussen de bedrijven, de overheden en de universiteit.
Zelfrijdende voertuigen hebben zich niet zo snel ontwikkeld als we een paar jaar geleden hadden gedacht. Daarom is het belangrijk dat we blijven samenwerken en ook blijven oefenen met zelfrijdende voertuigen in het stedelijk gebied.
De stad was een fantastisch project om te leiden en het is jammer dat het overgaat, maar ik zie uit naar alle toekomstige samenwerking met de partners.
Oké, nou ik vond het een hele mooie manier om zo'n fantastisch project af te sluiten. Ik weet niet of we nog in de uitzending zijn, maar als dat het geval is, iedereen bedankt voor de deelname. Blijf hangen voor de afterparty met de presentatoren. Ik vond het erg leuk om te doen. En Bart, mag ik jou feliciteren met dit succes? Mensen, tot ziens.